I'll expand part 1 into a more detailed, engaging narrative using natural language and simple words while keeping it YouTube friendly. The frosty winter evening painted the city park in shades of blue and gray. Steam rose from the ground where patches of snow had melted during the brief afternoon sun, creating a misty atmosphere under the streetlights. Despite the bone-chilling weather that made most people huddle inside their warm homes, one man remained dedicated to his evening workout routine. He spread his blue yoga mat on a relatively dry spot near the park's walking trail. At 32 years old, this personal trainer had built his career on discipline and consistency. No matter the weather, rain, shine, or tonight's biting cold, he believed in practicing what he preached to his clients. Dressed in thermal workout gear and a lightweight windbreaker, he started his warm-up with light jogging in place. His running shoes left temporary marks in the frost-covered grass. The park was mostly empty, save for a few hurried dog walkers and the occasional car passing by on the nearby street, headlights cutting through the growing darkness. The cold air stung his lungs with each breath, but he welcomed the sensation. This was his favorite time to exercise, when the world grew quiet and his mind could focus solely on the rhythm of his movements. He had chosen this specific spot because the overhead park lamp provided just enough light, and the location was visible from the main path, making it safe and appropriate for evening workouts. Starting his main routine, he dropped down into a perfect plank position. His fingerless gloves protected his palms from the cold mat as he began counting his push-ups under his breath. 1, 2, 3. The vapor from his breathing created small clouds that danced away into the chilly air. His form was impeccable. Back straight, core tight, elbows tucked close to his body. A few passers-by glanced his way, some with admiration for his dedication, others hurrying past with their collars turned up against the cold. He had become something of a regular fixture in the park, and many local residents recognized him as the guy who works out no matter what. Some of his clients had even found him through word of mouth, impressed by his commitment to fitness. As he continued his exercises, he mentally reviewed his plans for tomorrow's training sessions. The cold actually helped him focus better. Each movement had to be deliberate and controlled to maintain proper form. His muscles worked harder in the low temperature, making the workout more challenging, but also more rewarding. The evening grew darker, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the park. The temperature had dropped even further, but he barely noticed now, warmed by his continuous movement. His breath came in steady rhythms as he moved through his routine, unaware that this ordinary evening workout was about to become anything but routine. In the distance, a police car cruised slowly along the park's perimeter road, its headlights sweeping across the landscape. The sight wasn't unusual. Police regularly patrolled the area, and he'd always felt safer knowing they were around. Tonight, however, something was different. The patrol car slowed to a stop, and 2 officers stepped out, their faces obscured by the harsh shadows cast by their vehicle's lights. Little did he know that these next few moments would spark a chain of events that would not only change his life, but would ripple through the entire community, challenging long-held assumptions and eventually leading to meaningful change in ways no one could have predicted on this cold winter evening. Would you like me to continue with part 2? I can maintain this engaging style while developing the story further. The police car's headlights cast harsh shadows across the park as the 2 officers approached. The taller officer took the lead, his hand resting casually on his belt while his partner hung back a few steps. Their boots crunched against the frozen grass, breaking the peaceful evening silence that had, until now, been filled only with the sound of steady breathing and distant traffic. "Hey you. What are you doing out here?" the taller officer called out, his voice carrying an edge that seemed unnecessary for the situation. The personal trainer paused mid-push-up, looking up while maintaining his position. The officer's flashlight beam hit his face directly, making it impossible to see clearly. "Good evening, officer. I'm just doing my regular workout," he replied calmly, his voice steady despite the awkward position. He'd learned long ago that staying composed in tense situations was crucial. The cold air seemed to grow even chillier as he waited, arms beginning to shake slightly from holding the push-up position. Regular workout. In this weather? At this hour? The officer's tone dripped with disbelief. His partner remained silent, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot. Let's seize some ID. The demand came sharp and quick, but there was a problem. The trainer's wallet was in his gym bag, several feet away. Sir, my ID is in my bag right over there. Would you like me to slowly stand up and get it for you? He kept his voice respectful and clear, though his arms were really starting to burn now. The response he got wasn't what he expected. Stay exactly where you are. Don't move. The officer's command felt like it was carved from ice. A small group of evening walkers had stopped to observe the scene, their presence both a comfort and a concern. Some had already pulled out their phones, sensing something wasn't right about this interaction. The minutes ticked by painfully slow. The personal trainer's muscles screamed for relief, but he remained in position, knowing any movement might escalate the situation. His years of training helped him maintain the position, though it was far from comfortable. The cold ground seemed to seep through his yoga mat, chilling him to the bone. I've been working out here for months, officer, he explained, his breath visible in the cold air. I'm a personal trainer. I can show you my business card and certification. His reasonable explanation was cut short by the officer's harsh response. Did I ask what you do for a living? The officer snapped, while his partner finally spoke up, though quietly. We should probably let him show us his ID. The suggestion was quickly dismissed by the senior officer. More people had gathered now, keeping a respectful distance but watching intently. The personal trainer could hear whispers and the distinct sounds of phone cameras recording. The scene had attracted attention from passing cars too, some slowing down to observe what was happening in the usually peaceful park. The situation had transformed from a simple evening workout into something much more concerning. The trainer's arms trembled not just from exhaustion now, but from the growing realization that this was about much more than exercise in cold weather. His professional demeanor and clear explanations seemed to bounce off an invisible wall of preconceived notions. A young woman from the growing crowd of onlookers spoke up. He's here every evening, officer. I see him when I walk my dog. He's not doing anything wrong. Others murmured in agreement, their phones still recording. The collective voice of the community seemed to shift something in the air. The partner officer stepped forward again, this time with more authority in his voice. Maybe we should let him get his ID now. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The trainer's arms felt like they might give out any second, but he held steady, knowing this moment was bigger than just himself. As the standoff continued, car headlights from the street illuminated the scene like an impromptu stage, highlighting a moment that would soon become a catalyst for change in their community. Nobody could have guessed that this simple evening workout would expose deep-rooted issues and eventually lead to meaningful reforms in local law enforcement. Would you like me to continue with Part 3? I'll maintain this engaging narrative style while moving the story forward. The next few moments unfolded like a slow-motion scene from a movie. The personal trainer's arms shook uncontrollably now, his muscles pushed far beyond their normal limits. His workout clothes, damp with sweat despite the cold, clung uncomfortably to his skin. The officer's flashlight beam remained fixed on him, creating a spotlight that made him feel both exposed and trapped. I said, show me what you're doing out here, the taller officer demanded again, as if the push-up position wasn't clear enough. Count them out loud. The command came with a smirk that the gathering crowd could hear in his voice, even if they couldn't see it clearly in the dim light. The trainer began counting, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. 1, 2, 3. Each push-up was a battle against gravity and fatigue. The cold air burned his lungs, and his fingers had gone numb where they pressed against the yoga mat. Still, he maintained perfect form, his professional pride refusing to let him do anything less. The crowd had grown larger now. A city bus had stopped nearby, and several passengers stepped off to join the observers. Phones recorded from every angle, capturing the unnecessary display of power. Someone in the crowd started a live stream, narrating the scene in hushed tones. "This is happening right now at Central Park. This man was just working out." The younger officer shifted his weight uncomfortably, clearly struggling with the situation. He checked his watch, then glanced at the growing crowd. "Sir," he said quietly to his partner, "I really think we should." But the senior officer cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Keep counting." The taller officer barked when the trainer paused to catch his breath. The trainer's arms trembled violently, but he pressed on. 20 push-ups became 30, then 40. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, more urgent. Someone mentioned calling the police station directly to report the officer's behavior. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, her phone recording steadily. She was a local high school teacher, and her voice carried the natural authority of someone used to speaking up. "This is abuse of power," she declared firmly. "We all know this man. He trains half the neighborhood. This has gone far enough." Other voices joined in, a chorus of community support. "He's here every single day. I take my morning walks when he's training his clients. This is harassment." The collective outrage was building, but the trainer remained focused, controlling his breathing, knowing any wrong move could make things worse. Through the gathering crowd, an elderly man with a cane made his way forward. His presence commanded attention. He was a retired judge, well known in the community. "Officer," he called out, his voice carrying decades of courtroom authority, "I believe you've established whatever point you were trying to make. This man has more than cooperated." The taller officer's posture changed slightly at the judge's intervention. The flashlight beam wavered for the first time. His partner seized the moment to step forward. "Let's see your ID now, sir," he said to the trainer, his tone professionally neutral, but markedly different from his partner's hostility. Finally, mercifully, the trainer was allowed to stand. His arms felt like jelly as he slowly pushed himself up, his muscles screaming in protest. The crowd watched intently as he walked to his gym bag, every movement deliberate and careful. His hands shook as he pulled out his wallet, not from fear, but from physical exhaustion. The gathered witnesses remained silent but vigilant, their phones still recording. The city bus that had stopped earlier had long since departed, but its passengers who had gotten off stayed, adding their voices to the growing number of witnesses. Someone had already uploaded clips to social media, and notifications were starting to ping on phones throughout the crowd. As the trainer handed over his ID, his professional certifications, and business cards, the contrast between his composed demeanor and the officer's unnecessary aggression became starkly clear to everyone watching. The scene had transformed from a simple evening workout into a powerful demonstration of both injustice and community solidarity. Want me to continue with part 4? I'll keep the story flowing with the same engaging style while moving forward with the narrative. By sunrise the next morning, the video had spread like wildfire across social media platforms. The local community Facebook groups were buzzing with activity, and Twitter was trending with hashtags about the incident. The park where it all happened, usually quiet in the early hours, was now filled with news vans and reporters setting up their equipment. The personal trainer woke up to hundreds of notifications on his phone. His inbox was flooded with messages of support, interview requests from news stations, and calls from civil rights organizations offering their assistance. His muscles still ached from the forced exercise, a physical reminder of last night's ordeal. At the breakfast table of homes across the city, families watched the clips that had been shared overnight. Parents discussed it with their children, explaining why it was wrong. The high school teacher who had spoken up had already used it as a teaching moment in her morning class, showing her students how standing up for what's right could make a real difference. The retired judge who had intervened made several phone calls to his former colleagues. His voice, carrying the weight of decades of legal experience, added gravity to the situation. "I witnessed it firsthand," he told them. This wasn't just poor judgment. This was a clear abuse of authority. Local news channels ran the story on their morning broadcasts. They showed different angles of the incident, captured by various onlookers. Each video told the same story: a professional man, doing nothing wrong, subjected to unnecessary harassment while simply trying to maintain his fitness routine. The city council called an emergency meeting. The mayor's phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Community leaders demanded immediate action, not just empty promises. The police chief found himself facing tough questions about training procedures and department policies. At the local coffee shop, people gathered to discuss what they'd seen. The barista had already watched the video 50 times since starting her morning shift. "That could have been my brother," she told customers as she prepared their drinks. "He works out in that same park." The personal trainer's clients rallied around him. They shared stories of his professionalism, his dedication to helping others achieve their fitness goals, and his positive impact on the community. Many offered to speak to the media about his character and his long-standing presence in the neighborhood. Support came from unexpected places too. Other fitness trainers from across the city reached out, offering to help cover his clients while he dealt with the aftermath. Local gym owners offered him free space to train his clients indoors. The community was showing its strength through unity and support. By mid-morning, the police department issued its first statement. The words seemed carefully chosen, diplomatic, but the public wasn't having it. Comments flooded their social media posts, demanding real accountability. The video had struck a chord that couldn't be silenced with standard public relations responses. The younger officer who had been present during the incident made a brave decision. He filed a detailed report about what he had witnessed, choosing truth over the unwritten code of silence. His conscience wouldn't let him stay quiet, even though he knew this decision might affect his career. Outside the park, a small memorial began to form. People left encouraging notes, flowers, and workout equipment as symbols of solidarity. A group of early morning joggers organized an impromptu workout session in the exact spot where the incident occurred, their presence a quiet but powerful statement. Meanwhile, the personal trainer focused on staying grounded. He took calls from his lawyer, civil rights advocates, and close friends who offered support. Despite the chaos swirling around him, he maintained his professional composure. This was bigger than just him now. It had become a moment that could create real change. Would you like me to continue with Part 5? I'll maintain this engaging narrative style while developing the story further and showing how the community response grows and leads to meaningful action. The police department's Internal Affairs Division moved with unusual speed that afternoon. Their office, typically quiet and procedural, buzzed with activity. Investigators pulled files, reviewed body camera footage, and conducted interviews. The chief of police, feeling the pressure of public scrutiny, ordered a thorough review of not just this incident, but the involved officer's entire service record. What they found was troubling. Hidden beneath years of paperwork were multiple complaints against the taller officer, all showing a pattern. Previous incidents had been brushed aside, marked as resolved or insufficient evidence. But now, with clear video evidence and dozens of witnesses from the park incident, these old complaints took on new significance. The younger officer sat in a small interview room, his conscience heavier than the badge on his chest. He spoke clearly into the recorder, describing everything he had witnessed. His hands shook slightly as he detailed his partner's behavior, but his voice remained steady. "I should have stepped in sooner," he admitted, "but I'm speaking up now because it's the right thing to do." Meanwhile, local businesses near the park began sharing their security camera footage. A cafe owner's cameras had captured the entire incident from a different angle. The dry cleaner across the street had another view. Each new piece of evidence added to the growing picture of what had really happened that cold evening. Community organizations wasted no time in taking action. The local civil rights office moved their Wednesday meeting to a larger venue to accommodate the crowd. People from all walks of life packed the room: teachers, business owners, students, and retirees. They weren't just angry, they were determined to turn this incident into lasting change. The personal trainer's phone rang again. This time, it was a prominent civil rights attorney offering to represent him pro bono. "Your case could help prevent this from happening to others," the lawyer explained. "The evidence is clear, and the community support is overwhelming." The trainer listened carefully, understanding that his response to this situation could impact many lives. Back at the police station, the atmosphere was tense. Officers gathered in small groups, discussing the incident in hushed tones. Some defended their colleague out of habit, but others knew this time was different. The videos were too clear, the witnesses too many, and the public reaction too strong to ignore. The police chief called an emergency meeting with all shift supervisors. The usual polished conference room felt different today. The gravity of the situation reflected in concerned faces around the table. "We need to address this head-on," the chief declared. "No excuses, no cover-ups. Our community's trust is at stake." Local journalists dug deeper into department records. Through public information requests, they uncovered a history of similar incidents that had gone unchallenged. The park incident had cracked open a door, revealing systemic issues that could no longer be ignored. The retired judge who had spoken up at the park made calls to his contacts in the district attorney's office. His reputation for fairness and integrity carried weight. "This isn't just about one incident," he explained. "It's about ensuring our law enforcement system works for everyone." Social media continued to amplify the story. Each share, each comment, each new video angle added to the growing pressure for change. The incident had struck a chord that resonated far beyond the local community. People recognized that this could have happened to anyone who didn't fit someone else's idea of what belonged in a public space. By late afternoon, the Internal Affairs investigation had interviewed 12 witnesses. Each account aligned with the videos, creating an undeniable record of what had occurred. The younger officer's testimony proved crucial, providing an insider's perspective that couldn't be dismissed. "Would you like me to continue with Part 6? I'll maintain this engaging style while showing how the media attention grows and the impact spreads beyond the local community." As the sun set on the second day, major news networks picked up the story. Camera crews set up outside the police station, their bright lights cutting through the evening darkness. The personal trainer sat in a downtown studio, preparing for his first television interview. The makeup artist noticed his hands were steady, his composure unchanged despite the whirlwind of attention. "We're living 3, 2, 1. The news anchor leaned forward, her expression serious. "Tell us about that evening in your own words." The trainer spoke clearly, his voice carrying the same professional tone he used with his clients. He didn't speak with anger or seek revenge. Instead, he focused on facts, on change, on hope for better community relations. "I just want everyone to feel safe doing what they love," he explained, his words resonating with viewers across the country. "Whether you're exercising, walking your dog, or just enjoying the park, it shouldn't matter what you look like or what time you choose to be there." Social media exploded with support. Other personal trainers from across the nation shared similar stories. Videos poured in of people doing push-ups in parks, on sidewalks, in parking lots. A peaceful protest that spread organically. The hashtag Right to Exercise started trending, giving voice to countless others who had faced similar discrimination. The high school teacher who had spoken up at the park appeared on a morning show. Her students watched proudly as she described the importance of standing up against injustice. "When we stay silent, we become part of the problem," she said, her words striking a chord with educators nationwide. Local gyms began offering free self-defense classes and workshops on knowing your rights. The community response wasn't about anger, it was about empowerment. People wanted to learn how to protect themselves and others, how to document incidents properly, and how to support those facing discrimination. The younger police officer's testimony had sparked its own conversation within law enforcement circles. Other officers began sharing their own stories of witnessing misconduct, but feeling powerless to stop it. His courage in speaking up had created a crack in the blue wall of silence. Outside the park, a group of elderly residents organized a peaceful gathering. They brought chairs and thermoses of hot coffee, sharing stories of how the park had changed over the decades. "This is everyone's space," one grandmother declared, her voice carrying years of wisdom. "We need to protect that." Local businesses showed their support in creative ways. The cafe near the park created a new drink called the Night Trainer, all proceeds going to civil rights organizations. The dry cleaner offered free services to anyone who had been unfairly targeted by law enforcement. Small gestures, but they added up to a powerful message of community solidarity. At the police academy across town, instructors were already revising their training materials. The incident had exposed gaps in their approach to community policing. "We need to do better," the head instructor admitted during a staff meeting. "This is a wake-up call for all of us." The personal trainer's phone buzzed with another message, this time from a publishing company. They wanted him to write a book about his experience, about fitness, about breaking down barriers. He smiled, thinking about how this unfortunate incident might lead to positive change. National civil rights leaders reached out, recognizing the potential for this case to create lasting impact. They saw beyond the immediate incident to the possibility of real systemic change. The trainer's measured response, the community's united support, and the clear evidence made this a powerful catalyst for reform. Would you like me to continue with Part 7? I'll maintain this engaging narrative while showing how the department takes action and the community continues to respond. By the third morning, the police department had reached a turning point. The chief of police called a press conference, his usual confident demeanor replaced by genuine concern. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as he stepped up to the podium. His decision already made after a sleepless night reviewing evidence. Effective immediately, the officer involved has been placed on unpaid leave, he announced, his voice firm. "We've also launched a comprehensive review of all our training procedures and department policies." The chief paused, removing his reading glasses. "But most importantly, I want to personally apologize to the trainer and our community. We must do better." The press conference wasn't just another PR move. The chief went off script, speaking from the heart about changes that were already in motion. New body camera policies, improved community engagement programs, and mandatory sensitivity training weren't just promises. They were being implemented that very day. In his office later that morning, the personal trainer read through hundreds of supportive messages. A young boy had sent a drawing of himself doing push-ups in the park, writing, "When I grow up, I want to be strong and brave like you." These simple, honest words touched him more deeply than any news headline. The younger officer who had spoken up was facing his own challenges. Some colleagues avoided eye contact in the hallways, while others quietly thanked him for his courage. The police union representative met with him, ensuring his rights were protected after coming forward. His actions had started important conversations within the department about the true meaning of protecting and serving. Community leaders gathered at the local community center to discuss next steps. The room buzzed with energy as people shared ideas for positive change. The retired judge who had intervened that night led the discussion, his experience helping to channel good intentions into practical actions. "This isn't about punishment," the trainer explained during another interview. "It's about growth and understanding." He announced plans to start a free weekly fitness class in the park, open to everyone, including police officers. "The only way forward is together," he said, his words carrying weight because they came from a place of wisdom rather than anger. Local schools began incorporating discussions about civil rights and community relations into their curricula. Students wrote essays about standing up for what's right, and teachers used the incident to explain complex social issues in relatable ways. The high school teacher who had spoken up that night found her students more engaged than ever. The police department's internal investigation expanded beyond just this incident. Old complaints were reopened, policies were questioned, and officers with troubling patterns were identified for additional training or reassignment. The blue wall wasn't just cracking. It was being rebuilt with transparency as its foundation. At the park, something beautiful was happening. People who had never crossed paths before were talking, sharing stories, and finding common ground. Morning joggers chatted with police officers on patrol. Parents felt comfortable letting their kids play later into the evening. The incident had somehow brought the community closer together. The personal trainer's lawyer called with updates about the case, but the trainer was already thinking bigger. He had started drafting proposals for community fitness programs that would bring people together across all dividing lines. His vision went beyond just exercise. It was about building bridges and breaking down barriers. The story had evolved from a single incident of injustice into a movement for positive change. News crews returning to the park found a transformed space where people from all walks of life exercised together, talked together, and looked out for each other. The cold night that had started it all seemed distant now, replaced by the warmth of community unity. Would you like me to continue with Part 8? I'll maintain this engaging style while showing how the community reforms take shape and create lasting impact. As weeks passed, real changes began taking root in the community. The personal trainer's free fitness classes in the park had grown from a handful of participants to over 100 people each session. Police officers, teachers, business owners, and residents of all backgrounds spread their yoga mats across the grass, exercising together under the same sky where the incident had occurred. The police department's training program had undergone a complete transformation. New officers now spent time working with community members, not just learning about procedures and protocols. The trainer himself had been invited to speak at the academy, sharing his perspective with future officers. Your badge gives you responsibility, not just authority, he told them, his words making a lasting impression. The younger officer who had spoken up against his partner's actions was now leading workshops on ethical policing. His courage had earned him respect, and other officers began coming to him for advice on handling difficult situations. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, he would say, but it's always worth it. Local businesses had turned their initial support into lasting programs. The cafe near the park now hosted monthly community meetings where residents and police officers could talk openly about neighborhood concerns. The dry cleaner had started a program helping people dress for job interviews, breaking down barriers one suit at a time. The high school's curriculum changes had sparked something unexpected. Students started a community bridge club, organizing events that brought together different parts of the community. They'd hosted fitness challenges, cultural celebrations, and open discussions about making their neighborhood better for everyone. At the police station, the changes were visible. The walls now displayed community artwork, and the front desk had been redesigned to feel more welcoming. Officers attended regular training sessions on cultural awareness, and body cameras were no longer just equipment. They were a symbol of transparency and accountability. The retired judge's influence had led to the creation of a civilian oversight committee. Regular people from the community now had a real voice in how their neighborhood was policed. The meetings were well attended, with constructive discussions replacing what used to be confrontational encounters. The trainer's story had inspired others to share their experiences, but more importantly, to work toward solutions. A local tech company developed an app where community members could easily document and report interactions with law enforcement, ensuring transparency while protecting everyone's rights. In the park, new signs had been posted explaining citizens' rights in simple, clear language. But more meaningful than any sign was the change in atmosphere. Evening workouts were now common, with people feeling safe exercising at any hour. Police officers would sometimes stop by to do a few push-ups with the group, breaking down barriers one rep at a time. The community center had become a hub of positive change. Weekly workshops covered everything from fitness and nutrition to knowing your rights and community organizing. People who might never have met before were now working together, planning events, and solving neighborhood problems. The personal trainer's influence had spread beyond exercise. He had become a bridge builder, someone who could bring different groups together through shared goals and mutual respect. His calm approach to conflict resolution was being studied and copied by other communities facing similar challenges. Children in the neighborhood now played cops and robbers differently. Instead of chase and arrest scenarios, they pretended to solve problems together. It was a small change, but it reflected a bigger shift in how the community viewed law enforcement and cooperation. Would you like me to continue with Part 9, the final part? I'll wrap up the story, showing the lasting impact and positive changes that came from this incident while maintaining the same engaging style. 1 year after that cold evening in the park, the community gathered for a special celebration. The same spot where the incident had occurred was now transformed into a vibrant community fitness zone. Exercise equipment dotted the landscape, and a small plaque told the story of how one man's dedication to fitness had sparked lasting change. The personal trainer stood before the crowd, his presence as steady and calm as ever. He had turned down lucrative offers to move his business elsewhere, choosing instead to stay and continue building bridges in his community. His free fitness classes had grown into a full-fledged nonprofit organization, focusing on health, unity, and understanding across all community lines. The police department had become a national model for reform. The chief proudly shared their progress. Complaints were down 70%, community trust was up, and officers reported higher job satisfaction. The younger officer who had spoken up was now a sergeant, leading a new community relations unit that other cities were rushing to copy. Local schools had woven lessons from the incident into their everyday teaching. Students learned about civil rights not as distant history, but as living, breathing principles that shaped their community. The high school teacher who had spoken up that night now led workshops for other educators on teaching civic responsibility and courage. The park itself had become a symbol of positive change. Every evening, people of all backgrounds exercised together under the lights. Police officers regularly joined the workouts, their uniforms replaced by exercise gear, their presence welcomed rather than feared. The boundaries between protector and protected had blurred into simple human connection. The retired judges' oversight committee had expanded its role. They didn't just review police conduct. They actively worked to build understanding between law enforcement and the community. Their monthly meetings became a place where real issues were discussed and solved together, with respect and open minds. Local businesses thrived in the new atmosphere of trust and cooperation. The cafe near the park had become a popular spot for community meetings, its walls covered with photos of people exercising together, smiling, breaking down barriers one conversation at a time. The owner often said his business wasn't just serving coffee anymore, it was serving community. The personal trainer's story had spread far beyond their city. Other communities facing similar challenges reached out for guidance. He traveled sometimes to share his experience, always emphasizing the power of staying calm, focusing on solutions, and bringing people together through shared goals. Children played freely in the park now, at all hours. Parents watched with pride as their kids organized their own mini-workout sessions, mimicking the community classes they'd seen. These children were growing up in a different world than the one that had existed just a year ago. The app developed by the local tech company had been adopted by cities across the country. It hadn't just improved police accountability. It had created a platform for positive interactions to be shared and celebrated too. Good news traveled just as fast as bad news now. On this anniversary evening, as the sun set over the park, the personal trainer led one final push-up session. Hundreds of people joined in: police officers, teachers, business owners, students, and residents. They counted together, their voices united, their community stronger for having faced and overcome a challenge together. As darkness fell and lights flickered on around the park, people lingered to chat and share stories. The cold evening that had started it all was now just a memory, transformed into something powerful and positive. The trainer looked around at the faces of his community, seeing not different groups or divisions, but one united family, stronger together than apart. The story had come full circle, but it wasn't really an ending. It was a beginning. Every push-up, every smile, every conversation was building something new, something better. The park had become more than just a place to exercise. It was a living reminder that positive change was possible when people chose to stand together, even in the coldest moments. The personal trainer's last words to the crowd that evening summed it up perfectly. We didn't just build stronger bodies here. We built a stronger community. And that's the greatest fitness goal we could ever achieve.